Welcome to everybody and all the audience that are following us. I'm very happy and honored to host today Mr. Jean van Vetter, which is the Managing Director of Enabel. So welcome, Mr. Jean.
Thank you. Great to be here.
The pleasure is mine. So as you know, Enabel implements and coordinates the Belgium International Development Policy. Actually, Enabel is running more than 150 projects in 20 countries. Before getting into the conversation, we are very happy to share the vision with Enabel as a strong partner on the Pan-African Digital Assembly. Enabel builds a sustainable works by working with other experts, working with other communities, and helping them to run development initiative. So we will have the opportunity to discuss about the role of Enabel, supporting the SMEs, to discuss also about the role of the international community. But before getting to there, I will let you, Mr. Jean, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eva, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be able to be together with this community of entrepreneurs. I myself consider myself as an entrepreneur, so I feel part of this community, of bringing solutions, coming with ideas and co-creating for a better world. So I feel part of this community, and thank you for inviting me. I also believe that I'm very humble here because we have a lot to learn from African countries about the response from COVID, and I think that the solution will not come from Europe. So again, this co-creation is extremely important. I lived myself 6 years in Tanzania from 2011 to 2016. And I was impressed actually by the resilience, but by also the innovation that was coming from local communities. And some of the ideas that were coming from those local communities were not existing in Europe. And when I came back to Belgium 4 years ago, actually, I was sometimes disappointed by how little innovation was coming from Europe compared to what I've seen in some African context. So I believe that this kind of session where we can share our ideas and like your general introduction, together we are our greatest resources, bringing together ideas, I think that will be the solution to the global challenges that the world is facing. To introduce myself, I'm 42 years old, I have 3 kids, and I've been the managing director for Enabel for a year and a half. And before that, I had a career in the NGO sector. I worked in Tanzania, as I mentioned. Before that, in China, also a great country for innovation. And before that, in Cambodia. And before that, I was in the private sector working for Deloitte in Belgium. So thank you very much again for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jean. I want to start talking about this co-creation that you mentioned, and how do we get the different partners, but also the private sector to create impact, to make also tangible actions. You have also mentioned the COVID crisis, of course, and we know the impact that it has on our business. Even if the communities are coming with a lot of solution to the crisis, how do you see the startups ecosystem and the community response?
Okay, thank you very much. In our response to COVID, as for Enabel, we decided to focus on 4 areas. The first one is obviously strengthening the health system and preventing the disease. The second one is ensuring food supply, because we know the COVID is not only a health crisis, but above all, a socio-economic crisis. The third area is actually supporting the socio-economic recovery. And the fourth area is data, because data are essential for tracking the virus, but also for good decision-making. We need to be able to have accurate data to know where we should act and what are the problems, so we can better respond to them. In all those 4 areas of intervention, private sector and entrepreneurs play a key role. Let's speak about the first one, access to health and prevention. First of all, prevention. We know that you can come with great ideas and local innovations to inform the population. We know that there are apps developed by local entrepreneurs. For example, in Benin, we also supported a startup that has invented an auto-diagnose device. You can also do teleconsultation. Their private companies can bring, or entrepreneurs can bring a lot of ideas. In the prevention, also in Niger, we support women sewing masks. You don't need to import masks, and we see actually is the case in Belgium. Initially, we were thinking of importing masks from China. We realized that it was difficult, and you saw that the population and local entrepreneurs here in Belgium started to do the same. I think in Africa, the same can happen, and it's already happening. You don't need to wait for masks coming from China. You can actually support local factories and entrepreneurs to build their own mask. And I think what an organization like Enable can bring is the quality standards, ensuring that those masks meet international standards and allow to stop the spread of the virus. Improving basic services and healthcare, there obviously you work more with the government, but again, working with private initiatives and entrepreneurs can also help. In the second area, secure access to food, it's obvious. You work with family-owned businesses, smallholder farmers, local entrepreneurs to make sure that they can provide sufficient food to impacted populations, and you don't depend on international markets. And by the way, I speak challenges are global. It's exactly the same happening in Belgium. We see that we also sometimes too much dependent on international market, and you see a movement again of buying local products because you need to make sure that the supply is available. On the third area, strengthening the socio-economic resilience, there obviously is where our role with the private sector comes as the most obvious, ensuring startup can access to finance. That is not the role of Enable, but we have a partner, BO, the Belgian investment organization, that can provide equity to SMEs and to entrepreneurs. But what Enable can do is to provide capacity building and support to entrepreneurs, helping them access the market, providing them with the necessary resources, or working with the local governments to improve the business environment for those entrepreneurs. We also support innovation hubs and incubators hubs, example in Benin, where we have a project called DigiBoost, supporting e-health solutions developed by startups. We do similar initiatives in Guinea, where we work with the hub community in organizing hackathons. In Burkina Faso as well. I can give you examples actually in most of the countries where we work. And then on the fourth area of action, use of data. They're obviously working with telecommunication companies to use call details record to understand mobility patterns of people, use open data, using of tracing apps. In all those IDs, entrepreneurs come and we need to support their initiative. The role is also maybe to integrate those IDs and ensure that there is exchanges as well between countries. Because you can have a great ID from Senegal that can be later used in Rwanda, or conversely, and also a great ID, and that's something that I would like to do as Enable, great ID coming from one of the African contexts being then used in Europe. Because I come back to what I said in the beginning, I think the innovation ecosystem in many African countries is very active, and the ideas generated there can be for sure used in Europe. Mobile payment were introduced in Tanzania and Kenya 7 years before it's now used in Europe. When I was telling 5 years ago that I was paying my colleagues in Tanzania using the mobile phone system, people in Belgium could not believe it. So we shouldn't be afraid of saying that Africa has solutions to offer as well to Europe and other countries in the world. So that's it for the COVID response. I'm happy to elaborate more if you have questions.
Thank you very much. I think that you shared a couple of very interesting points. The first, seeing you and how Enable is involved in the private sector development approach, that also bring back this question of co-creation and how do you leverage public and private partnership. So what will be the vision for the Belgium corporation in building this link between the government and the ecosystem, the communities?
Yeah. Thank you. I think it already started 5 years ago. Our Minister for International Development, Alexander De Croo, has pushed for a transformation of the Belgian development cooperation policy to include much more the private sectors and entrepreneurs communities into the solution. Indeed, before, the international development community was very much bottom-up and working government to government. But for the last 5 years, the Belgian cooperation policies has completely changed, and we introduced a very large element of private sector development and private sector engagement in all what we do. In the last 5 new country programs that we have established, it's the case in Guinea, in Benin, in Senegal, in Burkina Faso, and in Rwanda. In those 5 countries, now the biggest component in our programming is about private sector development, is about how to support entrepreneurs in being part of the solution. What do we do? I mentioned access to finance. There we collaborate with different partners to make sure that entrepreneurs can access finance. But the core job of what we do is to working on specific value chains. If, for example, in Benin, we work with the pineapple value chain, in Guinea as well, but in other countries, we work with other ecosystems. And we look at the entire value chain and what can we do at different stages of the value chain to make sure that entrepreneurs can develop the right product, have access to the market, and that local regulations are favorable for those entrepreneurs to develop, that there are not too many bottlenecks. And if the bottlenecks are coming from the government, we would advise the government on how to develop entrepreneur-friendly policies and make sure that they can support this ecosystem. We can also work on other bottlenecks. For example, in Benin, we work with the port of Cotonou to improve the efficiency of the port so that entrepreneurs can export their product to international market more easily. We will also engage with the international private sector community to push them to invest more in Africa and to buy African products. An example is Colruyt, which is a very well-known distributor, food distributor here in Belgium. They buy their products in many countries, and we encourage them to buy in regions where they would not buy otherwise. And thanks to our intermediation, if I can say, Colruyt now buys cashew nut in Benin. So this is a new market for cashew nut producers in Benin. And we have a team here in Brussels and in the different countries where we work, which is looking at that how to make those linkages between international markets and local markets and support entrepreneurs to access those international markets. Supporting, I mentioned earlier, the DigiBoost in Benin, but supporting Incubation Hub is also our role. Organizing hackathons, putting ideas and projects and giving seed funding or giving some additional capacities for those projects to take off is also part of our responsibility. Digitalization plays an important role. We have a project called WeHubit, which provides grants for non-for-profit, here it's also entrepreneurship, but non-for-profit entrepreneurship, developing solutions to social issues. It's a fund, it's not that big, but still 20 million euro, which is available to those local initiatives that can provide solutions to social issues. Can be women empowerment, can be access to justice, can be access to health, can be whatever, digital inclusion, for example. We would provide some grants for those projects to take off and to scale up good ideas. We are also part of a regional European initiative called D4D, Digital for Development Hub, which brings together funding and expertise from the European Union and other European development agencies. Some of them are partners of this event, for example, GIZ or the French Development Agency, AFD. We are trying to pool the resources so that there is one European hub that can then provide support, funding, but also expertise, capacities to entrepreneurs and digital hubs across Africa. And by the way, I take the opportunity to say that I'm very impressed. I discovered the network of hubs that you gather together around Africa. So I'm proud to be able to partner with you. I know our contribution is small, but it's great for us to be part of this community. So thank you again for this initiative.
Thank you very much for the response. Again, a lot of crucial points. I understand at first this changing in attitude you mentioned between our countries, of course, and I believe all these examples that you're giving from Benin and from Senegal, you mentioned also Guinea, can be a good way to share best practices from what you're learning on the ground in each of those countries. This change of attitude, it also, as you were saying, building the link with the international community, with Europe, and not having the exports just in one sense, but being able to share more. You also mentioned all this importance of supporting the hub and supporting the entrepreneurs themselves. I want to share a few numbers. As you know, we have been conducting a survey to hubs, but also a survey to entrepreneurs and SMEs to understand what was the impact of the COVID-19 on their business or activities. And we realized from the SMEs part that 44% of them was at risk of failure, and 40% have just enough operating capital to go for the next 3 months. And that's the same with the hubs. 30% of them are actually of risk and can get over those 3 months. So it is very interesting in the sense that those communities of innovation still the most risky, but at the same time, 98% of them has solution regarding the crisis. So what will be your key message for those community of entrepreneurs and innovators to reach to the international communities and supporters?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think those figures are frightening in one sense, because indeed people are at risk. I want to reassure everybody, this is the case also in Belgium, when entrepreneurs also face great difficulties. But I think it's the nature of entrepreneurship, is this capacity to accept failure. I think in the development community where I come from, there is a tendency to think that everything has to succeed. Actually, no. I think we learn from failure, and I like this expression, celebrating failure, because you can also always learn from what you failed. I think what entrepreneurs can learn from this crisis is that, and the figure you mentioned are obvious. I'm afraid that my current business can fail, but on the same time, I think I have a solution to bring to this international crisis. So it's turning a crisis into an opportunity, and see to come back to your DNA, what is the core expertise that you have, or that your ecosystem has, or that your enterprise have, and how can you respond to the crisis, not only the health crisis, but for me, it's a change of context more than anything else. The COVID, it's changing the way things evolve. It's changing the way we will educate our children. I forgot to mention education, but COVID has revolutionized education because we know accelerate distance learning, but distance learning is a huge market. So as an entrepreneur, you could think, okay, how can I maybe get into this market using my technology that I developed for something else, but maybe I can adapt it to education. So this is the nature of entrepreneurship, is this capacity to reinvent yourself. Now, coming to the second part of your question, what can we do? It's typically to accompany those entrepreneurs who have ideas, but maybe need some support to reinvent those ideas, and to make sure to test those ideas and see whether they could get some additional support. And I mentioned the different tools that we have for that, financial support, but also technical support. And also what are the markets available, what are the markets locally available, and for that we rely on new expertise, for example, but also the expertise of other partners, and what are the international markets. And is there obviously as Enable as an international development agency where we can put our networks into the disposal of entrepreneurs. And that's what stands in the name of Enable. Enable means enabling, and that's our role. We are a kind of link, linking different communities together to provide solutions. I hope it replies to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Jean. So, seeing a few questions for our audience, you share with us how Enable is working with the ecosystem and the hub. You share a couple of examples. We have two questions regarding grants. So, how do Enable provide grants, and are you financially support social projects?
Yeah, so for social projects, I mentioned the We Hub It initiative. So you can go on the website. Every 6 months, there is a different cycle, a different theme. So depending on the theme, an entrepreneur, social entrepreneurs having ideas can submit, and they can receive grants. If I'm not wrong, it can go up to 300,000 euro per grant. I need to double check with my colleagues, but I think it's more or less the size of the grants we provide. So this is for social entrepreneurs. This is not for for-profit organization. For for-profit organization, their Enable doesn't have the legal tool to provide finance. I mentioned we have our partner organization BIO that can take equity in those projects. What we can do, however, as Enable is to provide some guarantees. So we work with guarantee funds to guarantee projects. We work with National Guarantee Fund or with existing guarantee funds to provide guarantees to entrepreneurs. So it's not direct finance, but it for sure helps to access finance. And we can also, of course, again, play this enabling role, linking those initiatives with organizations we know in our ecosystems. So yes, Enable, unfortunately, it's not a financing instrument, but can help access to finance.
Thank you very much. So inviting the audience, please be free to ask questions. You might see on Facebook a tool to use to share your questions. And for those that are directly with us, please do so. In the meantime, I would like to address, Mr. Jean, with you the policy question. As you know, at IFO Policy, we support inclusive and sustainable approach to public policy making, trying to have those bottom-up approach with the communities and to work with the governments. We also know that supporting the government's regulatory is a main role for the international community. How do you see this relationship going further? In our different ecosystem, what we see most of the time is very interesting program from the international communities that will be run with a specific partner. But sometimes that is not enough efficient for the whole ecosystem. So how, and when we discuss between hubs, we think that we should be more efficient, bringing all the hubs and all the international community together to see where the instruments and the policy are needed. So we would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, thank you. I think you are right. There's something I often saw is a disconnection between the policies and also the instruments that exist at the global level. Could be the World Bank, could be international development agencies. And the reality on the ground, because sometimes the language used is too complicated, and an entrepreneur like to keep things simple and call a cat, as we say in French, appeler un chat, and some of the international development committee come with those jargon, and indeed there is a disconnection. I think it's typically where the added value of Enable is, because we are, I would say, an intermediary actor between those people on the ground, and we have ourselves a lot of people on the ground. If you look at Senegal, we have, I think, more than 100 people working for Enable and working directly, not only in Dakar, but we are in the Sine Saloum, in Kaolack, if I'm not wrong, where we can work with local ecosystem there on the ground. And then we have our people in the capital and our people in Brussels and via our network in the different ecosystems, and we can for sure make those links and pass on the message to influence policy at those international development community level. On the same time, passing the message on the local level on how they can access and also adapt and be more, how to say, attractive to those international systems. I hear a lot, I had a recent conversation with the Director General of IFC, International Finance Corporation, and he says, we have too much money, but we don't know where to invest it because we don't find enough bankable projects. The same with the EU, with the external investment plan from the EU, there is a lot of money available. Actually, money is not the problem. Money is available. The problem is indeed to find the link between local ideas, but that can be bankable and this money. Because sometimes entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they need, of course, to shape their ideas so that it's attractive. It has sufficient guarantees. They think they have a business plan which is sound enough. It's not just a great idea. You need to, everybody, well, not everybody, but many people have great ideas, but you need to be able to sell it. And there's typically the type of support. We have an initiative, which I forgot to mention, which is called the Trade for Development Center, which is actually providing coaching sessions for entrepreneurs. So they can be coached in marketing, but also in financial management, in human resource management, because we know for an entrepreneur, it's not the same type of skills to be an entrepreneur and to be a manager. And sometimes you see an entrepreneur with a great idea and then they grow. And as they grow, they need to bring additional skills because it gets more complicated, and that's where we can also bring. I see a question, I actually have access to the chat, which is linked to what you say. What level of advocacy do you guys do to encourage business-to-business partnership through collaboration between startups in Africa and those in Europe? That's a very good question, because actually I realize if I take Belgium startups don't think about Africa, as Africa as a market. They would think about Germany, they would think about Asia, they would think about the United States, so I would say mature market, but they would think that it's too risky to go to some African countries. And actually what the advocacy we do is to show, but no, actually we are there and we can accompany you and we can make those links. And I think coming back to your introduction, co-creation, innovation will come when let's say a startup from Leuven in Belgium will get together with a startup from Dakar or from Kaolack, and together bringing their respective expertise, come with a new idea that the startup in Belgium did not think about and the startup in Senegal did not think about. And the convergence of those two ideas, this is innovation. That's when it converges. And to respond to Paul, who asked me this question, that's typically where I see our role. But this is relatively new for Enable, so bear with us. We need some time to develop those mechanisms. But it's typically, for me, the future of international development is to be able to do that.
Yes, this is very interesting. We have seen that with the crisis, actually, a lot of solutions that have been implemented in Europe to respond was conducted by mentors to work with the young developers here, replicated those innovations. So I think that this is a very interesting perspective. We will take a last question before inviting my colleague Yvan to join us. So Yandil is asking, what opportunities exist for supporting programs that can develop a pipeline of bankable ideas?
Great. It's typically the main challenge and what we try to respond. I think as Enable, we need to focus. We cannot do everything. So as I mentioned, we have chosen specific sectors in different countries because to develop the pipeline of bankable IDs, you need both to identify those IDs in one sector, but also which investor will be interested in those IDs. And depending on the sector, it's not the same type of or the same investor. So what I can say to Yandil is to, I don't know where you are based, Yandil, but is to get in touch with the local enable office, and depending on the country, we can tell you what is our focus in terms of supporting local entrepreneurs. You are in Botswana. I see you reply. Unfortunately, Enable doesn't work in Botswana. We are in 20 countries, but Botswana is not part of them. But I can check who is in Botswana and give you an answer by email. But typically, this is the role, the future role of organizations like us working on private sector development would be to make local IDs bankable, because I come back to what I said, money is available. The problem for international investors is that they don't have enough confidence and enough guarantee that their investment will be profitable. I take this opportunity, Eva, before you close, to mention something, otherwise my colleague Anne, who is listening, will not be happy with me, is that we have a focus on women entrepreneurs. Obviously, we want to promote more women to dare to create companies and innovate. So one of our focus as Enable is to work with women entrepreneurs. So that's something clear in our strategy.
Thank you very much. We just have a few questions coming from the audience on Facebook. So I don't know if I can steal some minutes from you, Mr. Jean, to address a few questions from the audience on social media.
With pleasure. I have all the time needed.
Thank you very much. So we have a first comment we're saying, and I think related about what you mentioned on the fact of being on the ground. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's also the meaning of this new narrative and potential around the continent. So this comment is saying that the African entrepreneurs are looking for fundings, but they also looking for investors that being able to understand the risk that we can face on the ground, and to help the entrepreneurs on the ground to surpass those risks. Mm. Yeah, what will be your answer for her in the sense of understanding the challenge on the ground and not just keeping the investor perspective of bankable business?
Yeah. But I think we need to make two types of partnerships and to differentiate them. There is one, an entrepreneur having a great idea and looking for equity or for a loan, and that would be looking at investors, but coming with finance. And there, the notion of risk will be key, because the investor is not on the ground and so needs some guarantees. There, what I mentioned earlier, guarantee funds can play a role, or the fact that there is an existing partnership with an organization like ours can also help. If they know that there is some coaching, it limits the risk for the entrepreneurs. And then the second type of partnership, which I think is more interesting, is a real co-creation between two startups, or between a big company in Europe and a startup in Africa. Because there, one of the messages I have for international investors is that Africa is a market, because the population grows. There is countries that are developing relatively well. Spoke about Botswana, but Botswana is a country which has developed quite well over recent years. It's also, this co-creation can help a European company to innovate. The example in Tanzania of SKF. SKF is a leading engineering company, and they approached me when I was there, saying, "Oh, our market is mature. We sell in the US, in Europe, but we want to create something new. The problem is for Africa, too many risks, and maybe our products are too not complicated, but too too expensive actually compared to Chinese products or Indian products. And my answer to them was that, but let's create something new. Just use your engineering skills to create a new product which responds to the local market. And then they start to look at agriculture and how could they develop local machines for agriculture so that local farmers would not need to buy machines on international markets. And then, you know, the problem when you buy machines internationally is that there is no local maintenance and the machine gets broken and then you cannot use it anymore. We have plenty of examples of that in the international development community. But if you help an entrepreneur to develop a local machine that you sell on the local market, you have a market, you respond to a development problem. And then for the international company who helps with the engineering, for example, in this case, this company creates new products and new markets, and maybe those products can be then used in Europe. I have another example in health, where companies like Philips invested in scanner for ecography for pregnant women to do those solar-powered scanner that can make a diagnosis in a remote area far from a city, and then with a SIM card you connect it to a reference hospital and the doctor can give an advice on the scan even if you don't have a local doctors there. This technology was developed for the African or Indian markets, but it's now used in Europe because you may also have the case in some European regions that you don't have a qualified doctor available in a remote area, and you could use this product in Europe. So for me, this is the most interesting type of partnership, is to have this co-creation instead of a relationship of a financiers that will invest in a local enterprise.
Thank you very much. This is strong and very interesting in the approach. So we have Christopher from Malawi. We're just saying that one of the main challenges, as we all know, is employability, and entrepreneurship can come as a response. But he's saying that in Malawi, one of the main challenges for the youth is when it comes to find jobs and how to make sure that they can get into the jobs environment regarding the education that they have. So I wanted maybe through his comments for you to share a little bit Enable action around education, and how do you see leveraging the employability on the continent?
Yeah, thank you, Christopher, for the question. I think it's an excellent question because there is a tendency to think that everybody can be an entrepreneur, that entrepreneurship will solve all the problems. No, entrepreneurs, not everybody is an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur, when your business grows, you will need to recruit people that are qualified for your enterprise. You will need, as you grow, to recruit people for production, for marketing, for human resource, for finance, etc. So you need to find those resources on the local market. So for sure, education is key, primary and secondary education, and also vocational training. And Enable, we have been extremely active in the last 20 years in developing the education system, in teacher training, very important programs actually currently running in Uganda, in Congo as well. And also on vocational training, we have a European initiative called the VET Toolbox that brings together different European agencies. It's a bit like the D4D hub that I mentioned earlier, but for vocational training, where a vocational training institute in Africa can call for the expertise of the VET Toolbox and also for funding. There is call for proposal. So if those institutes have innovative ideas, they can also apply for grants from the VET Toolbox. So yes, it's key. And there I go back to the basics. I think the traditional development partners over the last few years have a bit forgotten education. In a population, most of African countries have a population, half of the population is below 18. Primary and secondary education are key for the future. The basics is to have basic numeracy and literacy skills is essential, whatever you do in the future. We should not forget that. So it's a good reminder.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Jean. for all the response and all the point. I think that many questions came together and find response in a collective action through co-creation, as you mentioned it several times. You emphasize the role of the international community in bringing together innovators from Europe, specifically for Belgium in your case, and from the continent, and also how do we create local ecosystem between the local actors themselves? How do we link the governments with those ecosystems to create value and to be able to address the public policy in a way? So I will let you have a word to conclude our exchanges for the audience.
Yeah, but first of all, thank you for this initiative, which I find great. Thank you for the participants for the very relevant questions. What I want to say as a final word is that this kind of initiative, what we do together, corresponds to my vision of international development. So, and I think it has shown that in the COVID crisis, we are together. It's no longer how Europe can help Africa. I think we cannot say that, and actually when we speak about support, I don't like this word. Actually, it's a partnership. I think it's how we can partner together to solve our common challenges. And COVID-19 is a common challenge. Everybody, every country faces the risk, and we need to co-create on how we can together respond to this challenge. And the new strategy of Enable goes fully into this philosophy. Is an international partnership to solve global issues, with a particular focus in our case on Africa, but no longer on a north-south axis, but in a horizontal axis of working together. And I will come back with the sentence that you really liked: together we are our greatest resource. Thank you very much. Asante sana. I cannot say it in every language. I know Swahili because I lived in Tanzania. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous, Monsieur Jean. C'était un plaisir d'échanger. Oh, I'm going in French. That was a real pleasure to share with you. I think that you came up with a strong message of new partnership, new way of looking at things, new attitudes. So thank you very much.